If you follow this order, then you'll likely be among those who can build wealth quickly. When you get paid, where should your money go first? Many people don't have a plan for this and quickly spend their entire paycheck, so there's nothing left to save or invest. But there's another way to do this. When you have a payday routine, managing your money becomes super easy. A payday routine basically tells you what to do with your money each time you get paid and in which order, so that your money can grow as fast as possible. Routines are time savers because you can just follow the steps and don't need to rethink it every time. So today, let's walk through a 6-step payday routine using what's called the waterfall method. Imagine a set of buckets stacked at different heights, and your paycheck is the water flowing over them. Your money goes into the first bucket, your first priority, and once it's full, it goes into the next priority bucket, and so on. This way, you make sure you spend your money on the most important items first. Let's use a concrete example of someone earning $60,000 before taxes. In Ontario, they would pay roughly $9,500 in taxes, leaving $50,500 in after-tax money. I know most of you get paid bi-weekly, but to make it simple, I'll break it down monthly. So that's $4,208 per month. Now, step 1, before you spend your money on anything else, and many Canadians just don't take advantage of this, is to spend your money on your employer's RSP matching program first. This is a major benefit that some, but not all employers in Canada offer, where the employer matches the contributions you make into the employer's group RSP. The contribution limit is usually between 2 to 5% of your pre-tax salary, and the employer matches that with a contribution anywhere from 50 to 100%. That's basically free money, a guaranteed income of 100% on your money. If you're not familiar with RSPs, later on we'll go into a bit more detail on how RSPs and TFSAs work and what they can do for you. For now, let's just say that the RSP is a kind of savings plan with tax benefits. Let's say your employer lets you put 3% into that group RSP and matches it to 100%, which is awesome. 3% of a pre-tax income of $60,000 is $1,800 per year that you can put into that group RSP. And with 100% matching, your employer would put another $1,800 into that group RSP, totaling $3,600. So your first expense here is $1,800 per year, which comes down to $150 per month. Technically, this is step 0 because your employer would take off the money for the RSP matching before issuing your paycheck. Now, after spending our first $150, that leaves us with $4,058. Next, your money needs to cover your basic necessities, meaning your rent or mortgage, food, basically groceries that you need to survive, transportation, and health insurance. Ideally, according to the widely adopted budgeting rule of 50-30-20, you should spend no more than 50% of your after-tax income on your needs. And this may sound like a basic step, but for many people it's not. 50% of our remaining paycheck in this example would be $2,029 per month to cover rent, food, and transportation. Almost impossible in big cities like Toronto and Vancouver, but also increasingly difficult in smaller cities as well. Let me know in the comments below where you live and if you can get by with this amount. So to make it on $2,029, you would likely share rent with your partner or friend, or benefit from an older rental contract that's super cheap, or still live with your parents. In 2021, actually 35% of young adults in Canada still live with at least one of their parents. Anyways, to explain the concept, let's just assume that you make do with $2,029. So you have $2,029 left. For the next step, there are 2 options, and which one you take depends a lot on your specific situation. For step 3, you can either contribute to your emergency fund or pay off high interest debt. Now, which one is it? Both are critical. An emergency fund of at least 3 months, better 6 months, is super important to cover unexpected expenses, like a medical bill that's not covered by your insurance. Unless you want to wait to get that root canal, you'll need cash to pay for that sooner or later. But what about high interest debt? That's in general everything besides your mortgage or car loan. If you don't pay off your credit card balance, you'll be charged late fees and interest of 15, even 20%. If you had a $2,000 credit card debt at 20% and only paid the minimum each month, after 6 months, you'd still owe $1,838. And that's because the bank charges interest on interest, so it compounds and your minimum payments just can't keep up. So let's look at 3 scenarios here. In scenario 1, let's say that you carry $1,000 in credit card debt and have 0 in emergency funds. In this case, pay off that $1,000 first, as you still have money left to put into your emergency fund, for example, the remaining $1,000. In scenario 2, let's say you carry $5,000 in credit card debt. In this case, you could compromise and split a portion of your money off to repay your debt, for example, $1,800, and put the remaining $229 into your emergency fund. Personally, I would always put the majority towards paying off that debt and just keep a small amount for just in case cash. In scenario 3, our ideal scenario, you don't have any high interest debt, so you have more flexibility to save towards your emergency fund. Let's say initially your goal is to save a 6 months emergency fund, about $12,174. You have 2 choices that depend on your personal situation. You can either save maximum amounts first, or take a gradual approach. A maximum approach would mean that you put the entire remaining money towards your emergency fund. A gradual approach could mean that you make smaller installment payments toward your emergency fund, for example, $500 each month until that bucket is full. You could take the latter approach if your job is relatively secure and you have other means of accessing emergency money, for example, your parents. So let's say you go with the slower approach. So you put $1,000 towards your emergency fund, which leaves you with $1,529. If you're wondering where to save your emergency fund, it's best kept in a place where you can easily access the money, but that also pays you some interest. Many banks nowadays offer high interest savings accounts that now pay around 3%, and even cash accounts. Wealthsimple, for example, has a cash account that pays 3.25% interest. There's a referral link in the descriptions below in case you want to try out Wealthsimple. Or you can put your emergency fund into a GIC within a TFSA, which we'll talk about later, but here you'll usually have to pay a penalty on the GIC if you break it, and it will take you a bit longer to access that money. Now, step number 4 is to put money into tax-advantaged accounts and investments. Tax-advantaged accounts in Canada include the TFSA, RSP, and the FHSA. And where you put your money in first will depend on your particular situation. But here's a short explanation. When you put money into a TFSA or tax-free savings account, your money is tax sheltered. You can invest your money within the TFSA and it can grow without being taxed. Even when you withdraw the money, it will not be taxed. But when you put money into an RSP or registered retirement savings plan, you can defer taxes. Say your initial taxable income, so income on which tax applies, is $60,000, and you put $1,000 from your paycheck into an RSP. Now you can deduct that $1,000 from your taxable income, so your new taxable income is now $59,000. You pay less in taxes in the amount of very roughly 30% of $1,000 or $300 less. This will depend on your tax rate. But it's tax deferred, meaning that later on in 10, 20, or 30 years, any money that you withdraw from your RSP will count as taxable income. So people who contribute to their RSPs now usually do so expecting that their income by the time they retire will drop, which puts them in a lower tax bracket, so they pay lower taxes. In general, if you expect your income to increase in the following years, it's better to put the money in a TFSA first. Later, when you fall into a higher tax bracket, you can benefit more from putting the money into an RSP. Lastly, if you're planning on buying your first home, you should first put part of your paycheck into an FHSA or first home savings account. You can withdraw money tax-free of up to $40,000 if you use that to buy a home. This is just a very general overview, and if you need more detailed information, then click on this playlist up here. Now, very important, once you put money into a tax-advantaged account, you need to invest it so it can grow. You can invest it in anything from a GIC, which is one of the lowest risk investments, to stocks, bonds, and ETFs. And in case you haven't done this before, it might sound a bit complicated to you, and it used to be a lengthy process through banks, but nowadays you can do it completely online and by yourself using online investment platforms like Wealthsimple or Questrade. I personally used Wealthsimple the most, simply because there's no fee for buying and selling stocks and ETFs, but also because it's super user-friendly. But Questrade has some strengths as well, especially if you're a more advanced investor and if you want to transact in US dollars. I have accounts with both platforms, so if you want to try out either of them, I've put my referral link in the descriptions down below. And when you sign up and fund and use the account, both you and I will get a small bonus. But now what happens to the principle pay yourself first, where you're supposed to take money from your paycheck to invest first before anything else? Does this contradict with this method? Not really. It's just different levels of analysis. When your budget is set, meaning you've already committed to paying X amount in rent, mortgage, subscriptions, etc., then of course you have to pay those bills first. Otherwise, there are consequences. If you don't pay your rent, you can get evicted. If you don't pay your credit card bill, there's interest and late fees. So if you want to follow the maxim pay yourself first, this happens on the level of budgeting. If you really want to do this, you need to take a step back and work on your budget first. It's when you're setting up your budget that you pay yourself first, meaning you budget the amount that you want to invest first and then allocate the rest of your paycheck to cover your expenses. This can mean downsizing your home, splitting rent with your friend, moving back with your parents, selling your car and taking public transportation instead. But as long as you haven't done that, you'll have to pay your bills first and only then look at investing. So let's say you allocate $1,000 to your investments. That leaves you with $529. And remember, once your high interest debt is paid off and your emergency fund bucket is filled up, you can allocate even more to investing. So adjust your payday routine parameters from time to time. Now, what if you've maxed out all of your tax advantaged accounts, which is awesome? Then you can set up additional investment accounts outside of these accounts. Either way, keep on investing money so your money grows and works for you instead of the other way around. Now, at this point, you might ask, if putting money into an RSP can save me about 30% or so in taxes, shouldn't I invest money here first before paying off high interest debt? In general, I would still prefer paying off high interest debt first because the interest can snowball so quickly and you'll never have a peace of mind knowing it's still around. Plus, carrying large debt will also negatively impact your credit score. Before we go on to the next step, what about crypto? I definitely think there's a place for crypto in investing, especially Bitcoin, but since I haven't talked about this at all on this channel, I will leave it out for now and cover it another time. Next, put some of your remaining paycheck towards special savings. They're consumer goods, stuff that you consume and then it's gone, versus productive goods. Try and prioritize saving money towards productive items first. If you want to change careers at some point, save money towards a second education, like a certificate. If you're building a wedding photography side hustle to generate extra income, invest in that camera or equipment you need to earn more money. After that comes savings for your wants, like a vacation or a kitchen upgrade. Now, where to put this money for special savings? It's best to adjust where you park the money to the timeline of when you need the money. Say you're saving towards a postgraduate degree which costs $6,000 and you need the money within the next 1.5 years. You want to put that money into a high interest savings account or GIC that matures within 1 year or less, so you can easily access the funds without penalty. With most banks, you can open sub-accounts or separate savings accounts within your account for different savings goals. Or you can also save your money in your TFSA, but then you need to earmark the specific amounts for each financial goal. Now, let's say you want to put $350 each month towards saving for a camera or your side hustle equipment. That leaves you with $179. This money you can now spend on wants. This is your dining out at nice restaurants, concert tickets, new jacket to add to your collection, not the basic one that you need to protect you from the cold Canadian winters. There are a lot of reasons why some people don't build any wealth, and one of them is that they do the payday routine in the wrong order. They spend all of their money on their wants and, well, needs also first, but then there's nothing left. If you follow this order, then you'll likely be among those who can build wealth quickly. But one caveat. This, of course, only works if your income exceeds your basic needs, expenses. If your income just covers your needs, then you need to come up with a new plan. Either find a new job to increase your income or come up with a new budget for your basic needs. And I know it's gonna be difficult and you gotta be creative and think outside of the box of ways to slash your budget here and there. So watch this video next on hacks for how to save on grocery spending.